Hello, welcome to the No Rest for the Vivid podcast. My name is Claire Hill. I'm a self-belief coach and founder of the Vivid Business Club. And today I have one of my heroes here, which again, I've already been really gushy gay, haven't I? But you literally changed my life. Gay Hendricks is here on the podcast, a leader in relationship transformation and body mind therapies for more than 30 years, the author of many bestsellers, including The Big Leap and the new book, The Big Leap Year, Your Big Leap Year. Welcome, Gay. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Claire. I'm really, this is a great way for me to start the day over here in Southern California is having a conversation with you and your folks.
Oh, we're honestly so grateful. Like I said to you before we started recording, my membership, they're all such massive fans and they cannot wait. As soon as we finish recording, I've got to go live in the membership group to tell them all about how it went. You have a huge fan base. And I think what's really significant before we dive into everything, what's really significant is how your book transcends into so many areas of your life. Though I feel that it's a book that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners gravitate to because of the self-development world, but how there's just so many facets to it and how it has changed my life in so many different ways. And when I picked this book up, it was about 4 years ago, and I was in quite a low point. I was growing my business, but it felt incredibly difficult. And then I read the Big Leap, and I think I read it once and then went straight back to the beginning and read it again, because the significance of learning about the upper limit problems was just transformational to me. But before we go into that, how did it all begin? Where did the love story of everything start?
Yes. Well, I grew up in a small town in the southern part of the United States in central Florida. And when you hear Florida, you usually think of beaches and things, but that wasn't my part of Florida. I was right in the middle of the state with orange groves and swamps and alligators and rattlesnakes, that kind of Florida. And so I uh, I I was a problem when I was a kid medically because I had some kind of weird glandular upside down where I got fat very easily. So, like in the first year of my life, I got to be one of those real fat babies that you see pictures of sometimes with rolls of fat.
Yeah.
And as I kept going, I was continued to be a fat toddler and a fat preschooler. And they were taking me around to lots of different specialists because everybody else in my family was thin. And nobody could figure out why is this kid fat? And later on, medical science figured out the problem, but it was long after that. And so, but I mentioned that because I struggled with obesity all of my early life, and I didn't transcend that problem until one magic day in 1969 when I was 24 years old. So stop and take a breath there and picture a Gay Hendricks weighing 300 pounds instead of, I weigh about 185 pounds right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to translate that into kilos, 80 or 90 kilos, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I'm in good shape. I'm athletic looking. I work out at the gym 3 days a week. So if you saw me walking by, you'd say there's a kind of athletic looking old guy.
Yeah.
And so but at 300 pounds at age 24, I also wore big, thick glasses and I smoked 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And I was in a really toxic relationship, but I couldn't get out of it literally because I didn't have enough money to move to a different apartment. I had $39 in the bank or something like that. And so anyway, I was kind of stuck in this miserable place. And I I went out for a walk one day on a winter day, and I had an accident, a very benign accident. I stepped on a place, I was walking down a lonely country road in New England, New Hampshire, and I stepped on a place where there was snow covering some ice.
Oh,
and
yeah.
my feet shot out from under me and I went whoomp down on my back. And when you
Yeah.
think about it, a 300-pounder weighs about as much as a refrigerator, a
Oh,
big,
wow. Yeah.
you know,
You
so
came down
hitting
with
the
a
ground,
bang.
I came down with a bang and I didn't knock myself out, but the way I put it is I knocked myself out of my usual self. So I
Mm,
wasn't unconscious, but for about 2 or 3 minutes, I had this amazing thing happen, which changed everything about my life. During, it was like a light went on in my body, and my body had always been a problem, and I'd, just tried to stay as far away from it as I possibly could. Um, there's a great line in a James Joyce novel where he says, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body. And that
mm,
was me, just
yeah.
trying to stay away from it, the 300-pound thing I was carrying around. Anyway, but during these 2 minutes, the lights went on, and I saw that I was carrying a lot of old anger going way back to
Mm,
even before I was born. My father died during my mother's birth with me, which is actually what turned my chemistry upside down because she stopped eating for a long period of time
right.
and lived on coffee and cigarettes. And so during that time, I guess my body was desperate to try to store up any kind of nutrient it could. So,
Mm,
but that wasn't figured out till much later.
yeah.
Uh, but on this particular day, so I saw I had this old anger. And then looking down in my chest, it was like I could see with this new light all the sadness I was carrying that I'd never shared with anybody. And I sort of prided myself on never crying, and
Yeah.
the macho kind of thing. And then I could see that I was full of fear. I could see that my belly was full of fear that I'd never talked about with anybody. But then here's the magic. I saw that beyond all of those emotions was this big luminous place that I started calling pure consciousness.
Mm,
And it's the gift we're given just as being a human being that we all have this, but most of us get so caught up in the surface level emotions and things that we never kind of get down into ourselves enough to really feel that and own that and claim that. But in this moment, I did. And during this 2 or 3 minutes, I still don't remember exactly how long it was, but I was lying on my back. And then the moment started to end. I could feel myself shivering cold, and I could feel, oh gosh, I want a cigarette. Oh gosh, I'm going to have to walk a mile back home to the apartment and go back in, and I'll probably have another fight. So it's like my
mm,
personality was glomming onto me again. But I made this amazing move. I don't know how I did it, but I said kind of to the universe, I said, I'm going to do everything I can to feel that pure consciousness all the time because it felt so good and spacious and open. It was like the ocean with no boats on it,
oh,
or the
wow.
sky with no
Yeah.
clouds on it. It was magic. And it was a total discovery. I never even, I didn't know anything about yoga or meditation or anything like that. But I don't know if you noticed this. I bet you have, and all your folks have too, that when you get on the right moonbeam in life, things start to open up for you that come into your life that almost seem miraculous.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's it. And for me, it was again that kind of moment where I realized how I imagined myself when I would talk or the fear and the sadness I was carrying, I would actually sometimes talk about it, not all of it, but some of it. It was like I was covering myself in tar and I couldn't
Yeah.
get to that. It's like when you were talking then about the ocean, the sky, it's like a limitless feeling that you can be or and do anything you choose to if you really embody who you actually are and shed away those problems.
Well, that's a great point too, and we ought to jump in here and talk a little bit about the upper limit problem.
Yeah.
Let me finish the story. But anyway,
Yeah. Sorry.
so I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I did was start eating totally differently. I
Mm,
decided, okay, everything I've eaten up to now results in me being a 300 pounder. I know I ought to be a 180 pounder. So let me just start eating nothing I've eaten before, everything new. And I started, this will sound funny, but I discovered this whole new genre called fruits and vegetables.
oh.
And like I grew up with grapefruit and oranges literally within reaching distance of my bedroom. I could reach out the window and pick a grapefruit if I wanted it. But do you think I ever wanted a grapefruit? Ew, or an orange? Ew, or a fig or a pomegranate or all the stuff that grew on our property. But anyway, so I started eating fruits and vegetables. I started eating blueberries, actually. That was the one thing I could discover that was in my freezer was some blueberries. And so I think I lived on those blueberries, that sack of blueberries for about 3 days. I lost like 10 pounds in 3 days.
I bet.
Oh, here's the first upper limit problem though. By the end of the month, I had lost 35 pounds. I had lost more than a pound a day. So I
Wow.
basically had lost 1/3 of my excess weight in a month. And you can imagine the amount of energy that liberated.
Yeah.
It was like getting an extra tank full of gas, and whoosh, a supercharger for my life. And so I was feeling so good. And I'd gone down to Cambridge, Massachusetts to buy some books at the Harvard bookstore. And they had a great selection and great deals on books there. And I was in charge of the library at the school for juvenile delinquents that I worked at. And so I went down, so I had $100 in my pocket. I think I was going to buy a bunch of books, and I was feeling so great. And I looked to my left and I saw this family of four eating an ice cream concoction sitting inside an ice cream shop. I don't even know if it's there anymore, but it's called Brigham's Ice Cream. It was kind of like the primo ice cream shop in Cambridge at the time. So I went into Brigham's and I ordered one of those for myself. I went into a trance. It was my first upper limit trance. And
Mm,
I just went in there and the old part of me took over and I sat down and I got one of those for myself, like three flavors of ice cream and a split banana. I can't even, I couldn't eat a spoonful of it today, because I
yeah.
spent 50 years now refining my diet. But anyway, I ate this thing in about 20 minutes and I felt like the king of the universe with all that sugar
Mm,
zooming through me. But about 20 minutes after that, I was out on the street again and I got the stomach ache of my life. It was like some boxer had punched me in the gut because I bent over in the middle of the sidewalk. And actually, somebody asked me, are you okay, sir? It was my first king size upper limit problem where I went from feeling great to doing something that shut me down.
yeah.
I began to study that phenomenon. What's that? 1969 subtracted from 19 or from 2024. So that's 55 years ago, if my math is correct, that I had this moment and I've been studying the upper limit problem ever since. First of all, in myself. Oh, end of the
Mm,
story. Roll the clock forward a year. I lost more than 100 pounds.
well done.
Oddly enough, weirdly enough, my eyesight changed, so I no longer needed to have glasses to pass my
Wow.
driver test. I don't know how it happened, but it did. And so I was able to transcend that relationship. And then I was single for about, after that, I was so twisted by that relationship that I sort of avoided the whole subject for about 7 years or so
Yeah.
before I dipped my toe back in. I'm sort of glad I did because I learned a lot about myself. I had to figure out why by age 22 or 23 would I have created a relationship where I feel miserable all the time. That's what got me into looking at those limiting beliefs that I talk about in the Big Leap,
Mm,
because I said, I must have an unconscious belief that I'm supposed to feel miserable all the time.
yeah.
How do I know that? I feel miserable all the time.
Yeah.
So that was a huge discovery for me, realizing that I had lived my life out of these limiting beliefs, that many of which I'd gotten before I picked up my little lunch pail and walked into school for the first time. You know,
Yeah.
when you're 2 or 3 or 4, you're kind of like a soaking up um, mechanism for what's around you.
Yeah. I think with it's reminded me of a couple of things, that the realization that I was my upper limit problems were keeping me in misery because that's what was familiar. That for me, it just, I mean, my childhood my father passed away when my mum was pregnant with my brother, and there was I was the eldest and I had two sisters, and you know the chaos that comes with that kind of situation, but that's all you know, growing up, so it was just misery. It was miserable all the time. And it was
Yeah.
just as I grew up, if the misery wasn't there, I would create it. And there was a moment, a really significant moment. I'd read the book and about the upper limit problem of keeping you in your misery. And my son, it was his birthday, and we'd had an amazing day. We'd gone to the zoo with my husband's mum and dad. My husband was there. Just what a beautiful day, a birthday that I would never have had. I would never experience that when I was a child. And I was just
Mhm.
so proud that I could create that for my son, put him to bed. And then from nowhere, and I can't even remember why it happened, or why I did it, but I started a massive argument with my husband, to the
Mhm.
point where it just sabotaged those joyful
Mhm.
feelings. And then I remember going, oh, it's an upper limit problem. And I'd literally just read that part,
Mhm.
and I was seeing it in real time. And it was like I'd come out of my body and going, well, how many times have I done this? How
Yeah.
many times? And it was just such a weird circumstance. And I'm sure that lots of people that have read The Big Leap, and for yourself obviously as well, you go, oh my goodness, what am I doing? What and now I'm aware, I can pause. It's like I freeze and go, right, okay,
Mhm.
what's going on? What's my next step? But it's so significant, isn't it?
It really changed my life on the spot, and it
Yeah.
sounds like it changed yours on the spot. And blessings to you for, like I say, not only reading the words, but hearing the music, you know, actually applying it to
Oh
yourself.
yeah.
Um, when I started looking for the upper limits in my life, I found them all over the place. Um, I wish I could say that was the only time I sabotaged myself with that ice cream
Yeah.
concoction, but I did it on other occasions too. I actually had to ask a person to leave my house one time because he was a great practical joker. I hadn't seen him in ages, and he was very obese. And he came to visit me after I hadn't seen him in 6 months or so, and he'd gained even more weight. And during this time, I had, radically changed my body shape. And he, his eyes popped out when he saw me. And practical joker that it was, he went to the town that afternoon and came back with a 5 pound box of chocolate caramels, which happened to be something I just loved at the time.
Yeah.
And I have the dentistry to prove it back. I just had a visit for the dentist this week, so I'm
Oh,
back on good dental behavior again,
oh, well
flossing
done.
every day and brushing for the full 2 minutes and all that. But I was by then so into wanting to feel good all the time, but I said, hey, great seeing you again, but I just can't be around you anymore. And
Mm,
so he went back to his place, and I uh I felt bad about that at the time, but it's emblematic of a lot of changes we have to make in order to fulfill what I call our genius, our true
Yeah.
genius, our genius zone. See, one of the limiting beliefs, Claire, is that I don't deserve the full experience of love, or I don't deserve the full experience of abundance because I have a fundamental flaw.
Yeah.
That's the erroneous belief that a lot of people carry around. And, here where I live and access to Hollywood and musicians and everything, I have a lot of clients who are in the entertainment world, actors or musicians. And it's really amazing to see somebody that's won a dozen Grammys
Wow.
also be struggling with this particular one, because even though the person has won 14 Grammys or whatever I said, that person feels fundamentally flawed, so that no matter what happens, even the good things of life, it brings up that old feeling of being fundamentally flawed until you do some looking at it and work on it and systematically begin to take it apart, like I try to help people do in the book. I think we're stuck with it because I see people all the time. Um, I'm an avid golfer, and I play golf at a club nearby here where I live. And I see people in their 60s and 70s who are multimillionaires who are go around virtually as paupers in the area of love, for example. Or
Mm,
even though they have plenty of money, they're still looking for that first nickel that they were looking for when they were in kindergarten. That
mm,
they've still got some gnawing old sense of scarcity. So it doesn't matter if you're, winning Grammys or barely making it to the grocery store. We've all got to look underneath what our limitations are, because I want people to live in that radiant state of consciousness that I'm talking about. I've been privileged and overjoyed to live in it once since I discovered it. I started to figure out how to feel more of it through meditation and exercise and eating well and communicating well and things like that. So I figured out how to get it online all the time. And so I think that if you're looking for a great positive addiction, get addicted to pure consciousness and living in your genius, because nothing feels like it. It's a delicious feeling that you can walk around with all day long. But to get there, I had to put in my trench work, and God bless anybody who takes on because sometimes it's pick and shovel work when you get down into those parts of yourself and say, why did I sabotage myself after a day of feeling good? Do I have an old allergy to feeling good? And why do I have that? Let me look into that. You got to look into it, though, as you well know, Claire, with
mm.
a benign attitude. You can't criticize it out of your body. You got to open up some love and acceptance to it if you really want to heal it.
Mm. And it's, I think, a really good point of the book. And there's so many examples and stories in the Big Leap of people like one of them the other day that I was reminded of was the musician who played piano, and he loved playing piano. And then as the parents gave him the piano, oh, we wouldn't be able to get this for you unless your sister had passed away. Now, obviously, in that context, the parents didn't mean any harm by that, but that he obviously carried that with him for so long. It's that like um, the hidden things that we don't realize that are beyond our control. So these upper limit problems usually occur, don't they? That when it's not out of your own fault. Like I know your story with obviously with your mum and your family, and the day when you gave them your first book and they went, and this,
Yeah.
like I have had that happen to me too. But it's those up you straight away think, oh, well, in my situation, think, oh, they're not interested. That must mean that I'm flawed, inadequate for them not to be interested. But they carry their own situation about it. I've got my feelings, and it's when you realize, oh, I'm not in control of any of this. I'm holding on to something that is not mine to hold on to.
Yes, and if you think about that family where um, my client sat down at this piano for the first time, and the parents said, you know, let's
Yeah.
always remember Carol. We wouldn't have been able to afford this had she not died. And so, if you think about what they were doing, unconsciously managing their own
Of
grief,
course. Yeah.
and it was so sacred to them that they wanted to pass it down so that every time he sat down at the piano, that he remembered that. And, it's a kind of maybe a crude way to do it, but you can kind of have compassion because,
Mhm.
gosh, what do we do sometimes when we're so caught up in grief?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so in so much pain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to be lovingly acceptant of ourselves and, greet ourselves with love and certainly greet other people with love as best we can.
Mm,
So, what I learned throughout all of this, I learned, it's such a beautiful thing that there's a Kathleen Rains poem called The Invisible Way, I think. Look it up sometime. She says, birds crossing the sky, what is the invisible path that draws them?
mm.
And I love nature shows, and so there's a species of big turtle down on the coast of South America, Argentina, I think, that every year swims 1,500 miles out into the ocean to a little island called Ascension Island, which is a tiny little 3 or 4 mile stretch of land. And
Wow.
the turtle gets there, they lay their eggs, they come back to shore. And so obviously, there must have been a time when that place wasn't separated by water. That would be the
Yeah,
evolutionary
yeah, yeah.
explanation. But what is that pull that takes them? Where are those invisible currents that take them there? Well, that's pure beauty, pure magic. It's the magic of being alive on this planet at this amazing juncture of evolution, where we're just the perfect amount from the sun where we can enjoy a sunny day without burning to a crisp by and large, and or we can get stuck under a fog bank like I am today. Um, but it's a miracle. Who was it that says either you have to look as everything as a miracle or nothing is a miracle?
Yeah,
And why not look at everything as a miracle? Because look, I mean, there are 9 million species on this planet. How did I get lucky enough to end up in the one that can have a conversation on TV across 8,000 miles or whatever it is? That's
yeah.
something we should celebrate. It's a
Oh,
miracle. A lot of sweat went into it.
absolutely. I'm a big advocate of banking the wins, is what I call it. So we bank everything. So a hot cup of coffee, as even though it's really raining here today, I'm really grateful for the water coming down, and I've got clean water to drink. So I think I've moved through that element, and that recognizing, starting to recognize those upper limit problems, and obviously in the book, going through how to overcome them, which I'd love to chat about in a second. It's recognizing where I am right now and being so grateful for
Mhm.
here, what I get to do in my current state. And as soon as I started to do that, it was like I was a magnet for good. So
Mm.
everywhere I saw more good happened, more wonderful things. I was smiling more, my heart felt fuller. I was able to love more, love my child and my husband and my family, and just everything felt easier. And I'd been trudging through all this tar for all that time. And it just was enlightening. It really was.
That's why I'm so much want to carry the message wherever I go of that it's everybody can make the choice to open up
Yeah.
to more genius every day. What possible harm could befall you with more access to your genius? So,
Yeah.
but we've all got a stack of memories. Maybe for you, genius was some mad person on the outskirts of town, that was uh, lived in a small hut or something. But we need to get through that and own our own genius to be fully human, I believe. And so I've
Yeah.
worked with people now. I've worked with about 20,000 people over the past 50 some years, and one of the things that amazes me is since one of my books was a corporate book called The Corporate Mystic that came out about 25 years ago. And as a result, a lot of corporate CEO types started coming to me. And I found that people, amazing to me that a person could spend all day running a corporation that had 100,000 employees all over the world, making minute by minute decisions that cost tens of millions of dollars and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
having his own private jet. How come he couldn't figure out how to walk in the door without saying something that, excuse my French, pissed his wife off
Yeah.
every night? So he had some mechanism that said, I can have hundreds of millions of dollars, but I can't have love. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I J. Paul Getty, who was at one time the richest man in the world. I've been to his museum many times. He has two in Los Angeles that if you ever get there, I implore you to go, especially to Getty Villa, which has the antiquities and things. But anyway, blessings to J. Paul Getty. But he said at the end of his life, I think he was 83 or 86 at the end of his life, something like that. He said, I would trade everything in for one experience of lasting love. Oh, isn't that a
Oh,
heartbreaker? You know,
wow.
I I want to celebrate my wife, Kathleen, also known as Katie, to her friends and family. You may call her Katie now. Um,
I've
but
seen her on your
we,
Instagram. I love it. Love it when she's
oh
on
yeah,
your Instagram.
thank you. She's an amazing human being. But we just celebrated an anniversary, which was the 44th anniversary of the moment we met in 1980. And so, one of the things I want to mention that because one of the main places I got the upper limit problem figured out was in our relationship because Katie is such an amazing human being. I mean, I've never really seen her in a bad mood.
Wow.
She might get angry or something, but she never wakes up in a bad mood or inflicts it on other people. Since we figured out a couple of things that took us 7 or 8 years to figure out, like how to tell the truth to each other in a way that didn't push the other person's button,
Mm,
um, how to listen in a generous way that wasn't influenced by my listening filters, like listening to be right or
yeah.
listening to correct. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Just listening. It sounds simple, but it literally took me years and years and years. Like early in our relationship, Katie would say something like, I'm really tired. It might be 6 o'clock at night at dinner. And I was always listening from my Mr. Fix-It persona. I thought it was my job to fix people's feelings, especially women, because I had grown up as my mother's fixer and I was the
Hmm.
only game in town, as far
Yeah.
as somebody who could listen to her and
Yeah.
didn't make her wrong. Like if she'd gone next door to my aunt and uncles, they would have been kind enough to point out, hey, Norma, why don't you look at your end of things rather
Hmm.
than, but so anyway, I was Mr. Fix-It from the get-go. So
Yeah.
anyway, Katie would say, I'm tired. And I'd say, oh, well, let me give you a little shoulder massage. That never worked. Oh, well, let's put on some soft music and dance for, oh, well, why don't you do a relaxation exercise? It was never about the thing. It was about me thinking it was my business to fix it. And finally, on this one magic day, it was so great. She was so articulate. She said, look, I'm tired, or whatever she was. I require nothing from you except to simply hear me saying it. Specifically, I do not require you to do anything to make my tiredness go away. And I remember, it was so articulate. how the heck did it take me years to get to that point, you know? But
Wow.
that's the nature of relationship.
And I think that is it's so significant again because a very similar guy that I was the fixer for my mum, you know, exactly, basically exactly how you just described. And with my husband, I noticed recently how I always go, "You okay? Are you all right?" And he's like, "Yes." But are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. 10 minutes later, how you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. You just asked me 10 minutes ago. And then if something's going on, you know what you should try? You should get some of these vitamins. Or do you know what about do you want a drink? Do you want to? And I realized in the fact that you just said it's because I just want to fix everyone. I just want everyone to be okay. I just want everyone to be okay.
Yes.
But it's not me to do. I just need to go when he says things. I just need to go, okay. Do I give it? I
Yes.
say, would you like me to just listen, or would you like a solution? Maybe I just serve it up. Which one would you like?
Well, maybe now that you're more conscious of it, you could lead with a disclaimer. Say,
Yes.
I require nothing from you in this matter, but I just want to say how colossally mad I am right now.
Yes. Yeah. See, he'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do now, but now I'm going to try
That
it. I love
all he
that.
needs is one of those moments of benign confusion of saying, I don't know what to do. That's very authentic. You know, that's
Yeah.
something that men should be going around saying all the time, rather than, I know how to fix that, young lady. Um,
That's
one version,
exactly. How did you know?
I know because I used to be Mr. Fix It, and unconsciously, totally. What an amazing day that was. I'll tell you
Yeah.
another amazing day. Um, I was in the middle of criticizing Katie for something. She had come home. She said she was going to be home at 11 or 7:30 or something like that. And she had come in the door at 8 o'clock or 8:15. And I was saying, you know, where were you? You said you were going to be here at 7:30. Anyway, this was years ago. This was like 40 some years ago, probably in the first year or two of our relationship. So I was wailing on her verbally for being late. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, my tone sounds naggy and angry, but what I'm feeling in my belly is fear.
Mm.
Hmm. I'm sort of communicating irritation, but actually what's going on is I'm scared. And so I just blurted out. I just realized, I said this to Katie, I just realized I was sounding irritated, but I'm actually scared. And she stopped in her tracks, which people will do the first
Yeah.
time you say something authentic to them, something that actually where the vibrations coming out their mouth equal the vibrations they're feeling in their belly or their chest. If you're scared in your belly, saying, I'm scared, or if you're, I'm sad, or I'm angry, or whatever it is, it's that alignment with the way you are. So I don't think I'd ever really said anything that authentic to her before. So
Mm.
suddenly, I'm scared. And she said, oh my God, well, tell me about that. You see,
Mm.
because when you communicate authentically, it often speaks to people and they want to hear more. And I said, well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose you. And she said, well, oh, well, you're not. I'm here. Where did that hallucination come from? And I realized that I'd lived in that fear going way back because I had lost my mother because my mother
Yeah.
disappeared and my grandmother fortunately was
Mm.
nearby and was able to take over my raising, but I must have embodied that old program and somehow replayed it and replayed the emotions of it and was trapped in the grip of it 40 years later, 35 years later. So wow, was that a big day? Because that opened up a new type of dialogue between us, which you can read all about. Somewhere here, I have a copy of our book, Conscious Loving. Oh, yeah, here it is. Conscious Loving. we spent the 1980s working on our own relationship and then beginning to teach what we learned to groups of other couples. And so we had just finished doing that on one occasion with 12 couples or 11 couples in our living room. It was the max we could get into our living room. Anyway, so we had a large living room where people had room to move. But anyway, so we had this group of people in our living room, and we sat down at the fireplace afterwards, and we were just relaxing with a glass of wine or whatever. And so I don't remember if it was me or Katie said, we've got to go public with this stuff, because we had developed these techniques that work so quickly to kind of get couples back together and hook people up again. So over the weekend, I sat down and I wrote a book proposal. I'd published other books earlier in my career, but I sat down and I put a book proposal together of everything we had learned. And from then on, this is another good example of once you get on the right beam and are serving the right purpose in life, it's like life opens up. I happened to send it to an agent who wasn't even looking for more clients, but she happened to be there at the end of the day after the secretary had gone home. So she picked up the phone and I talked to her, and she just had a major bestseller with Amy Tan's book, The Joy Luck Club. I don't know if you remember that. It was, back 30 years ago, beautiful book. But anyway, big bestseller. And my agent was just coming off of that, Sandy Dykstra. And so she took us on. Next thing we know, we've published Conscious Loving. Next thing we know, we're on Oprah, and a whole different life opens up where we've trained something like a couple of thousand people now to do our form of relationship work around the world. So anyway, you can see the spark of it always just coming from those moments where you make a new choice for yourself, a choice to go for your genius, or a choice to open up to pure consciousness. It's those moments of choice that make everything possible. So my encouragement is to do what's on page 1 or the day 1 of the new book. It gives you a little thing to do, and I'll give it to you free. You don't even have to pay the $13.95 or $18.95 or whatever it is for it. It's to make a commitment every day to expanding your genius. I commit to expanding my genius every day of my life. I'm still doing that. I'm still discovering things about myself and about the world. I've been doing this now since 1969, so I'm 79 now. So for a long time, that's been my number one concern. It pays off because, like, if you get certain things figured out in your relationship, you eliminate the need for arguments. Katie and I learned that if you speak the truth, listen to the truth, and take healthy responsibility for things instead of, I know what's happening. It's your fault. If you just do this, this, and this, I'd be a lot happier. Or if you don't do this, this, and this, I'm out of here. We need to say the other part of the mantra is, why would I have dialed up this particular type of situation in my life? Why would it be inevitable that I would be in this particular moment at this particular time? That's taking healthy responsibility. I'm not advocating blaming yourself. Oh, why did I do that again? That's just giving heroin to an addict, that kind of self-pity.
Yeah.
We need to take healthy responsibility, not as a burden, but as a blessing, that it's a celebration that we get to take responsibility for our lives.
Yeah. And that is the biggest part of it, isn't it? Saying, okay, I'm refusing now to feel like this any longer. I believe there's a better way. One of the things that I used to do, because I'd love to talk in a minute about where do people start by reducing those upper limit problems. But the biggest one for me was I used to be the queen of pity parties, Gay. I would have the decorations up. I'd invite everybody. Come and listen about my dad. He died, and my mum wasn't great. And come and listen. Come on. Everyone pity me. I'm just such a victim. And the moment when I realized that, again, like I said earlier, it would be like covering myself in tar with the help of this book, it I realized how often I did it without even realizing I was doing it. And I feel that there are some upper limit problems, aren't there? They're quite, you know, that they're staring you in the face and it's your decision to look at them. And then because it's choosing to do something about it. Then you have the sneaky ones that will pop up. Where do you even start to, I mean, I know awareness is a big thing, but how do we start to dissipate these upper limit problems so that we can move into that zone of genius?
Well, let me suggest a couple of places to start. One is by asking yourself, what are my limiting beliefs? Check
Right.
the ones I give out in the big leap, because those
Yeah.
are ones that are common to, it doesn't matter if you're in Bombay, Mumbai, or Calcutta or Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Everybody I know, because I've done seminars all over the world, and everybody has those same issues.
Yeah.
Now, are you afraid that you're fundamentally flawed in some way? Does that hold you back? Are you afraid of owning the spotlight, letting yourself be the star? That's one of the limiting beliefs. Are you held back by the company you keep? Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel disloyal to your friends and family if you go to a 12-step group or read a
Mm-hmm.
self-help book or go to a meditation retreat? Do you feel held back by the environment in some way? And and so if you can start looking at those limiting beliefs, and the other thing is looking at the fear underneath them, particularly get to be a connoisseur of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Get to own your fear and feel how it shows up in your body and talk about it. Get able to say, I'm scared and I don't know what to do right now. Because that's a
Mm.
state of consciousness that many humans beings are in. So get comfortable with owning and declaring your fear, because that's underneath the upper limit problem. First, you get scared and then you dial up an upper limit problem. So,
Mm.
what example? I give an example in the book of, I think I did anyway, of passing the jewelry store. I was feeling great. And this wasn't too long ago. We have this beautiful jewelry store on the downtown area of my little town that I live in, Ojai, California. And so I'm walking down the street and I'm feeling so good. And I glance at a piece of jewelry that's in the window of this great jewelry store. Oh, what a piece of beauty. I imagine what it took to make that. And I kept on walking. And within about 10 seconds, I'm thinking about, oh, the poor and suffering of the world. Most people couldn't afford that ring in their entire lifetimes. And then I'm thinking about other terrible things about the world. So, what made me go from ecstasy and the admiration of beauty
Mm.
to how terrible the world is in 10 seconds? Well, I've still got some upper limit problem left in me. I can't just walk down the street feeling great, admire a piece of jewelry, feel even better, and keep on going. I got to stop and feel miserable and try to heal the world before I can feel good again. So, fortunately, I caught on to it and caught it within a few seconds, so I didn't carry that around very long at all. But that's what I'm in the business of, is catching upper limits and helping myself and others lovingly get through those so we can express our full genius.
I love that. And that, I think, is that the main reason behind your big leap year, to have it a little bit more bite size? Even though this is
Yes.
actually doesn't look bite size when you look at it like that way, but it is. Do you want to talk
Well,
about where the idea came from and how you put it all together?
well, the idea mainly came from readers of The Big Leap, who were
Oh,
kind enough to send me emails saying, hey, how about making a day book out of this? And so after resisting it, I mean, you can imagine how much time it took together to break The Big Leap down into 366 little
yeah,
daily
yeah. If you put
moves.
them side to side, there's a little bit
Yeah.
of
And that's even trimmed down from where
Yeah.
I started too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not complaining because
No.
every moment I spend getting to write books that people enjoy is a moment of great blessing for me. And so, anyway, after not listening to those people for 10 years, I sat down and wrote the book. And it's 366 days because you're going to come into a leap year now and then. This happens to be one. Now, you don't have to start it on January 1st. You can start it anytime during the year. It starts on
Mm.
day one, whenever you start it. So I have people that are just starting it this week and some of the groups I'm running. And then I have other people that started it as soon as it came in the mail back in February. So anyway, just start it whenever you get it because it's got the whole package in it, all broken down into little moves that everybody can digest and do every day.
And I think the beauty of it, you can't end I mean, this is my personal opinion as a big fan. I would definitely always read The Big Leap first. Fact.
I would too, yes.
Yeah, definitely. But then your Big Leap year, for me, it's like tiny stackable things. Because this
Mhm.
felt like I like it was just so transformational. But this, I didn't, like I said to you, I reached that point where I was like, oh, so that's like just over 3 weeks in. The stackable things add up, and it's just tiny transformations, but they're easy to digest in that way. And I feel that though I mean, again, like I said, I've read this so many times. I think I'm on my 8th time. This seems to supplement it in such a wonderful way. It's like reinforcing. It's putting those extra nails in the foundations. And I just adore it, even though that part of me, and I mean, if people are listening and they say, well, I've read The Big Leap so many times, what's the big leap you're going to give me? It's just that added reinforcement because the next stage, and I feel like I'm like personally, I'm at that stage now where new upper limit problems seem to be coming up because as my success grows. So now I'm at that, the ceiling, that invisible glass ceiling, and I've got to break through. There's upper limit problems but again, thank goodness I know all about this. But this your big leap year is in reinforcing it. And I feel that this is for every day of every year of the rest of my life. I know that sounds, but it is every single year. I'll just start again at day one and just keep going because that's how reinforced I want to live it.
Yes, well, I appreciate you saying that because it's one thing to have a big opening, like when you read The Big Leap, you have a big opening.
Yeah.
And it's another thing to be able to kind of stitch it into the fabric of your everyday experience. And
Yes. Yeah.
so, like some of the activities only take you 30 seconds to
Yeah.
do. So everybody can read a paragraph or two of wisdom and then do the little activity. It never takes more than a few minutes. And so I love people getting into action with it, and it gives you something to come home, excuse me, come home to every day.
I
We're
love
having
that.
allergy season out here, by the
I'll
way,
have
so
you.
pardon my rough throat.
You're absolutely is no problem at all. So as I said before before we started recording, I really want this podcast to become. I mean, it's been going for quite a while. This is going to be episode 214, I think, or something like that. So it's been going for a while. It's well established, but what I want it to be is a comfort for entrepreneurs and business owners when they are in that messy, middle, scary place, and hear the stories of successful entrepreneurs who have gone before them, who are potentially in places that they want to go to, that have been in that situation and moved through it. They just hung on. Tell me about the Big Sur. Is that how you say it as well? Is that Sir or Sure? No,
Big Sur, yes,
Big Sur. Tell
SUR.
me about that.
Well, Sur means south in Spanish.
Oh,
And
right.
so there's a section of the California coastline called Big Sur, and it's where Esalen Institute is located. And it's just one of the most beautiful places on earth. And so I I was driving in my car and I was heading down toward Big Sur, and I was ruminating on a problem. I had two problems. Oh God. This takes me back to a really unhappy time of my life, 45 years ago, but it led to something so magical. I have to tell you. So I had been in this on and off again relationship for several years, and I had just fallen in love with Katie.
Mm.
And I mean, literally just, it had been in the past month or so, and I didn't even know anything about the relationship yet, except I knew I felt happier than I'd ever felt in my life. And I'd never actually experienced that kind of love before. And so I felt like I'd learned so much about relationship, but I was still stuck in this other relationship, in this back and forth thing. And I was afraid to call her up and tell her about this experience I'd had, about that I'm in love with another woman. And I
Yeah.
mean, that's a 10-second communication that I just at the time could not get out of my mouth. Now, listen to this. Here's the other part. At the same time, I was feeling gradually more and more miserable because I felt like I had the flu. My nose was streaming. It felt
Mm.
different than being stuffy from allergies. My nose was streaming and I had that kind of achy joint feeling. And I'm driving my little VW bug down through the pouring rain toward Big Sur. And as I'm driving and I'm getting closer and closer to Big Sur, I realize, oh my gosh, am I feeling miserable simply because it's the universe's way of trying to get me to tell the truth and get into integrity with myself? And then I thought, maybe that's possible. And so I pulled into a telephone booth and there was some guy talking on the phone. And I sat there in the rain and I waited and I waited and I waited. And get this. Then I said, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea to call her and tell her the truth. What a squirmy thing. And so I get back on the road. And by then I'm kind of down into Big Sur. And I'm heading toward Esalen, which is south of Big Sur, about 10 or 15 miles. And that's where I'm going to spend the next 3 days working on my new book and everything. But of course, I've got the flu, and how am I going to do that? And so then I see another telephone by a little store, and there was nobody at it. So I put all my quarters in the phone and got hold of Carol back in Colorado. And I said the magic words and had to put in more quarters as I listened to an earful of invective, which I richly deserved. So I had to breathe through all of that. And once I'd been reminded that I was the worst human being in the world, then we could get off the phone. But you know what? My flu went away.
Wow.
And it's amazing that I think we have great power over ourselves. There's this wonderful verse in the Gospel of Thomas, one of the apocryphal Gospels, that says, if you bring forth what is within you, what is within you will save you. But if you do not bring forth what is within you, what is within you will destroy you. I mean,
Mm.
look at the truth of that is everywhere.
Yeah.
If you don't bring forth the things that you really want to bring forth, you don't feel good. I mean, it's not going to kill you maybe, but it's not going to make you feel good. But when you start expressing your genius and doing more of what you love to do, it gives you a sense of vibrance, vividness, whatever you want to call it, of that zest for life.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it now for, well more than half my life. And like Katie and I haven't had an argument this century.
Wow.
Nobody's actually said a critical word to each other this century.
Wow.
And once we got certain things figured out, it just didn't ever occur. And so the information is all there. You just need to act on it and do something about it and make it part of your daily go around.
You're not only an expert, it's like you're an expert in relationships with your yourself and with those closest to you, because even as you're talking, I'm thinking about me and my husband. I'm definitely going to buy the other book, Conscious Loving, is it called? The other book.
Yes.
I'm going to buy that. But as it reminded me of a story of when, before I became self-employed, I used to be a teacher. I used to teach maths and I was an assistant head in a secondary school over here in the UK. And I had my baby Jackson. And while I was on maternity leave, I began making art with wire, which is what you can see behind me. So I'd make big sculptures and words, and I just loved it. But also the significance of it was that I used to make and build things all of the time, and then my dad passed away, and then I stopped, and then I started caring. So it was I remember a very specific decision I made. I put it down. So having Jackson, I always say, like, he set off a dream in me. There was another reason for doing something that brought me joy. But what the Wire did, and the business is called the Vivid Wire. Everything's vivid in my business. Um, was it led me to what I do now, teaching people how to believe in themselves. But when I was away, and just before I went back to work, so I did a year full time with Jackson as a little baby, I developed a stomach issue that was very significant. And I would have this awful pain. And when I went back to work, it just got worse and worse, to the point, I couldn't even drink a glass of water without setting this pain off. And then through wonderful, like you say, miracles that happened, I left the job. I started working on Vivid Wire full time. And then I moved into this and coaching and membership and all of this thing in my community. But I don't have the stomach pain anymore. And I think,
Mm.
like you say, it was my body saying, you've made a choice to
Yeah.
follow something that gave you so much joy, and then you've put a break on it and gone back to something. I mean, I loved the children in school. I mean, there's nothing like working with children. There was so much fun, but it wasn't true to me. And I still get to teach now with what I do. I teach
Yeah.
and I teach the Wire, but it was like my body saying, you've made one decision and you're going down another path. And then as soon as I went, no, I'm going to go back, the
Mhm.
pain disappeared.
I salute you for making those discoveries and being able to teach those to others. Say, before I have a riot among my personal assistants here who are
Oh,
jumping up and down and telling me my interview should be over,
oh.
um, let's wind this up before I get pulled out by one of those hooks.
It's because I could literally talk to you forever. Before we go then, what would you, and I asked this and I thought the 10-year question, really, I should be saying a bit more than that. But if you could tell yourself something 10 years ago that you wish you knew now, what would that be?
I would say learn to live more in your body, learn to learn to love yourself more, learn how to feel when you're feeling pain or sorrow or fear. Even though I've been doing it for many, many years, I want to get even more open to that. So I'd say anything you can do for 10 seconds to really let yourself feel the luxuriant landscape of your inner self, that will be very valuable to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gay. Before you get into trouble, obviously I'll let you go. I'll put all of the links to these books and all of the books and your website and everything into the show notes. But thank you very, very much for this afternoon. Or the morning for you. I appreciate it so very much. And I hope I haven't made you too late for your next thing.
I'm where time comes from. They don't understand that yet, but I'm where time comes from. Well, great. Thank you for the pleasure of talking with your group and listening to your lovely questions and your beautiful accent and for an hour. And we'll do it again sometime.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Gay. Thank you.